Hi, this is Shyama.
Hi, this is Amrita.
And we are the hosts of the Voice It Out podcast. Hello, everyone. Hello, Amrita.
Hello, Shyama.
Happy New Year.
Woo!
Woohoo!
Happy 2024.
Happy 2024. Happy New Year to all of our listeners and watchers, viewers. We hope you've had a wonderful Christmas and you've had a wonderful, wonderful New Year's. 2024. New year.
Wow.
I know. Can you believe we've been doing this podcast for a year?
Yay, happy birthday to us.
Happy birthday to us. Happy belated birthday to us. Oh my
Yes.
God. It has been an amazing journy.
Definitely.
And I thank you very, very much as a wonderful, wonderful co-host and obviously a brilliant friend, as usual.
So then I have to thank you back
Of course you have,
for,
you have to.
for being obviously an amazing friend, but also just, I feel like we bounce off each other really well in the podcast. So I think
Absolutely.
I've got to thank you for that.
Thank you. I mean, we came into this kind of not really knowing what we're doing.
Unknown territory.
Literally, it was just, we had been doing something for 10, 11 years. We'd been something completely different. And we just took a leap and a jump and a hop and a skip. And then we're running, I think.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Let's hope we don't trip.
We've tripped many times and I'm sure we'll trip again. But
You know the secret to that? Wearing the right running shoes.
oh my God, absolutely. I like that. Oh my God. So how have you been? How has this year been for you?
This last year has been, I wouldn't say it's been easy, but I think a lot of people will say the same thing. It's been a tough one, for various reasons, including the podcast and being on a new journey, etc. But I think if I look back, and I was doing this last week, at the last week of 2023, I looked back towards the last year and I felt glad that I was coming out of it. And I felt that at the end of 2022 as well. But I didn't think I would feel the same thing after a year for different reasons.
Absolutely.
But that's how I feel. I feel like, but I always feel, you know, like the freshness of a new year is just something completely like different. It feels different. But how has the last year been for you? How has 2023 been for you?
I mean, it's been a roller coaster. It's definitely been a roller coaster. And I think that this goes for both of us. We've both been, not just with the podcast, but in our personal lives separately. We've had to deal with things that we never thought we would have to really deal with.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think it's one of those things where I feel very fresh and very positive about this new year. But you see, like last year, I didn't really know what this year was going to bring for me. I remember being a little bit apprehensive about, you know, like just not really knowing. I was in very unknown territory. Whereas I think this year I feel a little bit more positive about my own self because of the things that have happened and how I've dealt with them. Now I'm still dealing with a lot of stuff.
But 2022 was a big one for you, right? You got married.
Yeah,
and you moved from what you've known for obviously over 30 years
exactly.
to somewhere new. So that's always going to be a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm putting it mildly.
Well, it's still like I'm still dealing with the things that come with that. And I think it's one of those things where I feel a little bit more settled in my own self.
But I dealt with this as well because this girl used to live literally around the corner.
I know.
And then she was gone.
Do you know what? I'm going to be honest. That is something that I have actually found quite difficult as well, because it was like, especially throughout the pandemic, you were kind of my saviour. We would like go
for random walks during lunchtime.
Exactly. And it's just sort of true. Like those moments are quite, they mean something to me and they're important.
Yeah, of course. But also, it was one of those things where you actually moved and then we started the podcast as well. Yeah. So if it was that we had started it before that, we probably would have found it a little bit easier easing into it and being podcasters than we did, obviously, because we started only a year ago and you had already moved on.
Not moved on, just moved. But I mean, you know, like, I think just, I mean, from where we started, obviously we were deer in headlights, had no idea what we were doing.
Headless chickens, deer in headlights, all of the metaphors that come with it.
And we actually were like, and I mean, how do you feel about that, knowing what you know now?
You know what's really funny that you asked me that, because about a week ago, I listened to our first few episodes.
Oh God.
And because I knew of someone who had just started listening, and I thought, oh, let me revisit as well. Now, obviously, I've listened to these episodes a number of times early on in the year, but I hadn't listened to them since we'd done season 2. And honestly, I felt embarrassed because we were even though our content was, really relatable. The points we were raising were great. You could tell, or I could tell, that we were really nervous. And especially in the first episode, because we recorded our first episode in a hotel room. And we obviously had our own equipment, which is different to obviously recording in a studio. But it just felt like the whole episode was nerves.
Oh God.
And you just listen to it. You can listen to it and you'll probably hear it now. Oh God, because then I've listened to all the other ones that we've done more recently and I've been like, oh my God, thank God we've eased into it.
We're so much more refined.
Wow. Yeah.
But this is it. I think that's with starting anything. And to think back, because
it was just funny though, because I feel like it was only like a year ago.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my God.
Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you'd feel like it was like 2-3 years ago and you like you said, become refined. But it was literally only a year ago.
Well, it goes to show how fast learners we are and how we just know how to hone in our craft. But
exactly.
I mean, that is really interesting because obviously, like when we first started, we didn't have a video, we didn't have guests. It was just the two of us. And I remember having this conversation with you to be like, we were really trying to think like, how are we going to make this work? And how are we going to get sort of, listenership and viewership? And that's still something that we're working on.
Yeah.
But I think, like for me, I think that I'm really glad that we managed to do that in our first season where we were figuring out what we were doing.
Yeah.
And then sort of get comfortable with the setup and with everything. But I mean, yeah, I mean, like how do you feel? How are you feeling about the comparison between just the two of us, and then we bring on guests and there's video? Like, how have you felt about?
So I think you've kind of just said that. I think I was actually really glad that we did just episodes by ourselves because I know initially I wanted guests, but because we weren't doing video and we were still figuring things out ourselves in terms of equipment and studios and what we wanted to release it on and all this kind of stuff, I think it gave us a bit of time to kind of figure out what topics we wanted to include, because we had this ongoing conversation about what we wanted to include in season 1. And then in season 2, it's been a little bit more lenient, but with an overriding theme. So obviously we've gone from a target audience of British Asian women or women.
Yeah.
To a target audience of British Asians, but also everyone. It's quite the conversations are quite relatable and not, even though we try to relate them to the British Asian culture, it's not just kind of limited to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think the transition between 1 and 2 has been good for us, but I still hate myself on video.
Oh, don't even.
It's just a matter of suck it up, just do it. But it's all about what you're saying and not how you look.
But you see, this is I think we're always going to be self-critical about that, and I think that's definitely something that we both have to work on, because like the amount of times people have been like, "Oh my God, you're on YouTube now!" Like I've had people, a couple of people being like, "Oh, that's so good," and I'm like, I just hate how I look, and they're like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, so I think it is. You are self-critical. Previously, when we were doing journalism stuff, when we were doing interviews, we were on camera because that I think we both, or I definitely took time to understand that, you can't only have it on audio.
Yeah.
You have to be on camera, especially if it's a celebrity or, if you want to just show a different kind of avenue to watch an interview or like, I don't know, just basically take in what you're trying to present.
Yeah.
But yes, I've always wanted the podcast on video, but yeah, it's just, it's just one of those things where I'm glad we have guests.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I feel like if it was just us two, like this episode,
hello,
we might not have that many interesting things to say. Kidding.
I think we definitely would, but I think having guests, like, I'm gonna be honest, like, you know, we had we had lists of guests. I think we've touched wood at the moment. We've had a really nice variety of guests that have come on who are from all kinds of different backgrounds.
Yeah.
And you're right, like, it hasn't just been about the British Asian culture. I think, you know, it's turned into something where anyone who listens to it, I would hope, would get something out of it. And like the guests that we've had so far have had such interesting journeys.
I think they've given an... Sorry to cut you.
No, that's fine.
I think this is like one of the questions I was going to ask, but to answer it anyway,
Yeah.
I think what I've really enjoyed about all the conversations is my main thing, especially if it was someone I knew before, was to try and get something from them that I know of them, but maybe no one else does. And I think that surprised us in some of the guests because there were things that we didn't know a lot of about some of our guests. And then when we had the conversation, it was like, wow, that was actually a really wholesome conversation for us even, not just for the guest.
Well, we learned something new about them, didn't we?
Yeah.
And it's sort of, and especially like, you know, some of these guests we've known before and, you know, we've spent time with them and we've hung out with them, but we never really got to have those kind of conversations.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. It was so, and I've always come out of each episode feeling lighter. And you know when you're like, oh my God, that was really good.
Yeah, that little buzz you get, kind of that, you know what, that was actually quite good and we can't wait for someone to like listen to it or whoever it is, about whoever it is really. I feel like I felt that in most of the episode recordings we've had so far.
Absolutely.
But if there's one thing that I would change about season 2, it would probably be the episodes that you went in, because obviously we're a two-headed podcast. Double-headed podcast.
Yes.
It's weird to only have an episode without your co-host. But I just wanted to mention, we have had a Bollywood star on the podcast, which I never thought would happen in season 2. But yeah, I think that was insane.
How was that for you? Because, you know, that was something that, you know, we're used to being in front of celebrities, big names, but this was something different. This was for something different. How was that experience for you?
Yeah, so it was different because it was for a podcast as opposed to for a publication. It was also different because you weren't there. And it was also different because it was a Bollywood star and a friend of mine. And so it was obviously me kind of interviewing them. So I was so excited that, oh my God, it's a Bollywood star. And oh my God, it's Manisha Koirala. Wow.
Well, the thing is, I think with especially with Manisha Koirala, because of like, we've been a fan of her since the 80s,
I've got to
90s.
be honest. Like, I nearly told her this as well
Really?
At the end of the interview. In my head, when I saw her, when she was sitting in front of me, I just had all her songs running through my head. So I had like Pyar Hua Chupke Se and like the song from Agni Sakshi, I can't even remember it now. Song from Agni Sakshi, Aaj Main Upar. And I just had these running in my head, or Diwani. And I was just like, no, don't do it. Don't do it. Because I literally was thinking to myself, maybe I should start singing it at the end of the interview.
She might have joined you. I'm going to be honest. She probably might have joined you.
I feel like it might have made a laugh.
But it was such a nice interaction. Like, and okay, yeah, it was an interview, but also the way that, you know, like there was such a nice comfort level between the three of you. And what I loved is it, you know, even though you were asking both of them individual questions, they both sort of bounced off each other.
Yeah.
And then they bounced off you, and it was really, really nice. Like, unfortunately, it wasn't as long as our normal episodes are.
Yeah, so I think I was really conscious of that as well, because then it is kind of an interview.
Absolutely.
But I've had some really good feedback actually from people I know who've listened, and people who I don't know that have listened as well. They just said that it was a really uplifting conversation, which is basically what I went in trying to get, because I knew that it was to do with adversity, and through adversity you always come out with some sort of gem of a thought or something, right? So I just wanted to kind of capture that in that 15-20 minutes, and hopefully it did.
Well, you know, it's about also being vulnerable, and I think with them included and some of our guests
and us
and us, absolutely. Like, absolutely. It's showing that little bit of vulnerability without having to like put a guard up and be like, you know, I can't say this and I can't say that. And, you know, in those kind of conversations, it's really nice because it is that kind of, you know, they're showing a little bit more of themselves.
I feel like that's been something that has happened in most episodes. You have to put yourself out there in order for the person opposite you to put themselves out there. And I feel like with that between us two as well. But how have you felt about that? Because I feel like I've been more, how do I say, like even in interviews or like maybe my reviews that I used to write or even my blog posts, I feel like I was a bit more out there than you were. So how did you feel when you started the podcast and as it's gone on about putting yourself out there a bit more?
It has taught me to really think about sort of what are they putting out there and them being comfortable, and you as well, like kind of having that thing of being comfortable in order to sort of like talk about certain things. And, you know, there's been times where I've revealed a little bit more and there's been times where I've kind of held back and been like, oh, maybe I'm not too comfortable talking about this. Because it is that thing of when it is just us three, me, you and the guest.
Yeah.
That's it. It just feels like it's us.
Yeah.
So, you know, but I think I feel a lot more comfortable with being able to articulate myself more. I think it's that. It's not about what I'm saying. It's about the way I'm saying it. And I think that's something that I'm still learning and I'm still going through it. But I think it's been something that sort of I'm learning so much. I'm learning so much. And I mean, I wanted to ask you this. How have you felt the podcast, if it has helped you in like your personal life and the things that you've gone through this year?
So it's weird, right? Because when our podcasts release, we don't know who's listening. So I don't know which family members or which friends or which acquaintances, which colleagues. I don't know who's listening.
Yeah,
basically. And I know that like it's not scary for me because I don't think I've said anything particular that I didn't want to say. But obviously there's probably things I've said that other people have been like, oh, or just surprised them or been like, why did you reveal that or whatever it is. And realistically along the way, I've not had too much feedback about what I've said or anything like that. But I've had the odd person kind of contact me or when we've met in person, just kind of say, oh my God, your podcast is really good. Or just give general feedback. Now, the really weird thing about having to kind of understand that it's almost like, it is like writing for a publication. You write and you don't know, you put a blog post up, you don't know who's reading it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get feedback and I feel really overwhelmed because I'm like, oh my God, it's actually resonated with that person. And I think I feel the same about the podcast because there's been some episodes, even in season 1, where we've talked about topics that have been what we think are really important things to talk about in the British Asian community for women. But I've had males come up to me and be like, oh my God, I listened to this and it was great. And I think that's been the biggest kind of takeaway for me, that you don't know who's listening and you don't know it. You know, like the people always say you don't know who's watching.
Yeah, it's true.
And I think the podcast has given me that feeling in a different way because it's my voice as opposed to my writing or my words. And I'm kind of finding myself in that a little bit because I'm just like,
yeah,
I like that, but also I'd like more people, I'd like more people to just express how they feel about what we say and what we're talking about. And, you know, like it really helps us because it makes us kind of understand what people are liking, not liking. Obviously, it's a personal preference as well, but it just gives us a bit of an idea of the amount we're putting ourselves out there, basically.
Absolutely. And I think it's also the fact that sort of having more engagement also gives us an idea of things that we haven't even thought about talking about. And I think that, I think it's like, for me, I think it's definitely, I've taken on certain things about, especially with what how our guests have sort of navigated their own lives. You know, like they do, a lot of them, like all of them have spoken about, you know, what they do and their careers and how they navigate that and what they've learned from it. And it's really insightful because it's sort of like, you know, on the outside, let's say if we didn't have this podcast, we didn't talk to them, and we just saw like their social media or, you know, their LinkedIn or something that shows their successes, we would never ever understand that, oh, hold on, in order for them to do that, they had to go through all of this and they had to do all of that. And, you know, like just seeing what they had to go through themselves in order for them to get in a place of, okay, look, now I can show my successes. Because it's true, you're going to see everyone's successes. And, you know, like there's this thing, I can't remember where I heard it. I can't remember where I heard it, but I heard this thing where, you know, the person they were talking about, I think it was either on a radio show or another podcast, a mental health podcast. They were basically saying how you compare people's outside world to your inner world.
Yeah, I think we do. Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, that is so true.
It's a bit like what Navin said, Navin Kundra in his episode, that it takes a lot of effort to look effortless.
Yes.
And it's so true.
It is true.
It's so true, because even just, you know, like just that, actually have the kind of motivation to tidy your room and then take a video or take a snap or whatever. It's a lot.
In a nutshell, you know, you only see the final product.
Yeah.
You don't see everything that happens beforehand.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of what Fatima's journey was like, where she said, she goes, you know, she had like something happened in her life where, you know, she had this illness and she kind of had to stop what she was leading, like what she was working towards. And nobody sees that.
It's true. I do feel like, I think the clip that I saw, sorry to just backtrack.
That's fine.
The clip that I saw about people comparing their inside to people's outside worlds, it was Katrina Kaif, the clip that I saw, where she was like, don't compare yourself to all these happy posts on like Instagram and stuff, because you don't know what it takes for people to get there. And also some of that is fake.
Yeah.
You know, like just
absolutely
straight up, like it's not real, some of it. And obviously we've seen that in real life as well.
Yeah,
like people do that and make themselves out to be something that they're not in real life. And so I think that's another thing that I wanted to mention actually. And obviously ask you a question as well, that, you know, like with our podcast, I've had a lot of questions come at me at the beginning saying, oh my God, how much do you prepare for each episode? Now, sorry to kind of disappoint, we actually don't prepare that much for every episode. I just like to think we're naturals, basically.
Hopefully it's working.
So yeah, we do prepare, don't get me wrong. Like even you can ask any of the guests that have been on our podcast. We have a brief kind of chat.
We definitely research our podcast.
We research, we do our research. We then obviously have a chat with them, whether that's, you know, on a phone call beforehand or, you know, while they're sitting here before we record. And then it's just, I think the most important thing for me for a podcast, and I think I'm hoping that I speak for Shyama as well, but obviously correct me if I'm not. I feel like for us, the most important part of a podcast episode is the conversation.
Yeah.
And if our conversation was really pre-prepared, it wouldn't sound, to me, it wouldn't sound as authentic as maybe it does at the moment.
The thing is, I think if we did that much preparation as well, I feel like it wouldn't give our guests the opportunity to just be themselves and be able to just open up in the way that they're comfortable with. Yeah. Like, I think one great thing about, you know, the main thing about me, like, you know, we agree on a lot of things, and in terms of what we want each episode to be and how we want the feel of the podcast to be, is that it is a natural conversation. Yeah. And our guests feel comfortable enough with us to be able to talk about the things that they're comfortable enough to talk about without any judgment, without any kind of preconceived notion of what might come out of this and stuff like that. And I hope that our guests, you know, past and future, do have that feeling of, oh no, this is actually a really safe space.
Yeah, you know? I hope so too. And I think that most of them that we have actually recorded with do, even the ones that we haven't known very well. Yeah. So I was going to ask you, on the flip side,
sure,
what has been in the podcast something that has nagged you, or something that you've been like, oh my God, why didn't I know this? Or even just, something like negative that you think has turned into a positive or something like that as the time has gone on. Or it might not have, it might still be frustrating.
I mean, there's been a lot of frustrating, with anything, there's a lot of frustrating things. And I think it's one of those things where okay, I'm going through a list in my head. The social media stuff, I have found quite challenging because I've never, like you said, I've never been someone who's just put myself out there and been like, okay, this is what I'm doing and this is how I'm doing it. And I remember I'm getting a little bit better now, but I'm fingers crossed. But like, I remember like messaging Amrita going, oh my God, what do I do with my social media? How am I supposed to get, like, what do I do? How do I, it was a real big struggle because I'm just like, and she would be like, just, people just want to get to know you. So just put whatever you want out there, even if you just share things. But it would be really sort of like, I'd get really like, oh my God, yeah, but if I share this, then they're going to think about this and they're going to think about that. And it's just like, no, it can be really simple.
Yeah, I think that's what I was going to say. It doesn't have to be complicated. But also, a lot of people think that I'm really active on my social media, so they know me inside out. Yeah. Like, it's just like, I'm showing you what I want to show you.
Do you know what? This is really interesting because it's really fun. Because I know this.
Yeah.
I know very much. I know this a lot. And I know, like, even before we started the podcast, I remember, like, you'd put something out there and the interactions used to get, people would be like, oh my God, this and oh my God, that. Like, it would be like, no, she's not actually saying, oh, she's like, people who think that you're taking you as face value.
Yeah.
And you've said something, especially when you say something that they don't agree with.
But I like that.
I think it's great. I think it's
hilarious.
Like
that interaction.
I think it's absolutely hilarious. But like social media, and it's really funny because some of our guests have actually said, they're like, we hate doing the social media. But if it wasn't for social media,
there's no way of putting yourself out there these days. Yeah.
And I completely, like, I get it completely. Like, we go through it all the time. But what about you? What has been something or a few things that have been a negative, or that anything that you change?
So it's weird because I'll pick up on the social media point only because when we started the Voice It Out podcast, we had a rough idea in our heads of its identity.
Yeah.
But we have to build it, right?
Yeah,
so we built it in season 1 without videos. And what's happened in season 2 is we have kind of lent on some of the guests to show the kind of conversations we've had, or give a little kind of insight into the conversations we've had, kind of lure people in, as you do. But I still feel like I struggle with the actual identity of the podcast, only because we've changed between season 1 and season 2. And it's not a frustrating thing, but I feel like it's been, I guess you could call it kind of a negative, because we didn't know.
Yeah.
Like you said, we've been on our own podcast journey, and we didn't know exactly where it would go after season 1. We didn't even know where season 1 would go up until a certain point, and then it obviously started coming into its own. So I think we've turned it into a positive, but I think we still need to do better.
Yeah.
At creating an identity for Voice It Out podcast on social media, like we said. Like, I've got to say, hats off, kudos to anyone who has, like, built their own brand and literally made that journey and done it authentically and not had to use underhand tactics or whatever. Because for us, like I said, the content is king, right?
Yeah.
So what we are conversing about is basically what we want to be known as. And I've had a lot of advice in the last year of when I've talked to people about how to put ourselves out there a little bit. And a lot of people have said, oh, you should market yourself as being, as putting up the controversial quotes, or putting up something that will lure people in. And although, yes, I totally get that, I don't want all of our conversations to be controversial. I want them to be important more than they're controversial.
Yeah.
And so that's why our underlying theme, even though we don't actually say it, is talking about mental health.
Yeah.
Because I definitely don't think in the British Asian community we can talk about mental health enough, especially in men. And so that's why I think it's really important. I think Shyama's kind of on the same page, that we make mental health an aspect of every episode, even if it's a small one.
Yeah.
It's there.
Because it's also the fact that as we've been, especially with season 2, as we've been doing it, it's something that everyone's dealing with. It's something
especially after COVID.
Absolutely. COVID has changed so much. And I think has changed people so much in the way that we think about these things. And I think we have to. I think we're both on the same page that we have to. We've got to talk about these things. If it's not being, like, conversation is where normality comes in. The more we speak about it, the more people feel safe to talk about their mental health issues. And it might not even be mental, it might not, you know, like, the subject mental health is so broad, it doesn't have to be like a certain mental health disorder or whatnot. It could literally just be dealing with day-to-day life and dealing with how you do every day. And I think with the identity bit, I feel like you're right. I think that because, you know, within the first year, we did season 1 and season 2, and both seasons are very different.
Yeah.
So I think that was bound to happen.
Yeah.
And I feel like the more guests we have, the more episodes we do, the way that this podcast will grow, it will come into that.
So I've got one other frustration from this year.
Go for it.
So I think the other frustration that I have is people not understanding that we kind of know where we're at. Like, we know we're new. We know that, you know, like, we can't click our fingers and get the biggest guest. But I feel like people are so scared to come out and tell you that. And I just think, just say it. Like, I'm not going to get offended. I know where I am. I know we're building something from scratch. I know that if I invite this guest or that person or this person, I know sometimes they're going to ignore me. But there's one thing that I hate is people ignoring. So I think that's been a bit of my frustration, only because I feel like some people haven't responded because they don't think we're big enough. And I understand that up until a certain point, but I think it's just a frustration that I have to just, as courtesy, please just reply, even if you can just say, I don't have the capacity at the moment.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, I'm not in any bubble that, you know, like, this is the biggest thing since sliced bread and everyone should come on it. We're not going to be changing, I don't think, we're not going to be changing the crux of our podcast, which is to have important conversations and conversations that people find relatable and with people that maybe you haven't heard these things from. And I don't think we'll change. So therefore, if someone is expecting suddenly for us to become controversial, might not happen anytime soon.
But this is what I mean by creating a safe space.
I think, that's a frustration I've definitely had.
I agree.
I have a question. Okay, so what is something you love about podcasting?
Definitely the conversations. Absolutely. I think that's the actual conversations that we have, and just especially having our guests on and just being able to have those conversations, do what we're here to do. I'm hoping that even if it's one person who listens to our podcast and thinks, if not all of them, a couple of them, one of them, whatever, and thinks, oh my God, I relate completely. This is something that I'm going through too, or I know just have some sort of connection with it. It's my favourite part. What about you?
I think, apart from the conversation, because I don't want to say the same thing, I think it's been the surprises that I've felt talking to a third person, like a guest. Like,
what do you mean by surprises?
It's like, you know, like, because I've always wanted the podcast to be more than an interview, which it is. It's kind of surprised me how much people are willing to say, in a way.
Okay.
Like, I think that's basically what it is. And I think that's made it even better for me. Like, it's enriched the conversation because our guests have been so giving and they've been so vulnerable. They've been so honest. And I think even some of them have stepped out of the room and been like, oh my God, that was fantastic. And I like that feeling. I like that feeling of being kind of trusted or surprising someone, and, you know, like, because they didn't know what to expect. It's like the first podcast or something. Yeah. And I like that feeling because I feel like that is the importance of the conversation, which I keep saying. But I think that's what it is. It's not just about what me and Shyama want. It's not just about us thinking, okay, we'll talk about this or we'll slip this in. It's about the guest also feeling comfortable enough to be that honest. Because in interviews, sometimes you can't. You have time limitation, or you have topic limitation, or you're promoting something, or, you know, like, whatever it is. And I think I found that I really love that aspect of podcasting.
what I wanted to ask you is like I said at the beginning, we've both been through quite a lot this year, personally. What has this year taught you about yourself?
Outside, not just with the podcast.
Yeah.
I think
even if it is with the podcast.
That's a tough one. There's been a lot of lessons this year. If I had to choose one, I think it's... So obviously, at the beginning of the year, I left a publication I was with for 10 years. And that was tough because I was leaving something that I'd built. And I didn't know how I'd feel about it going on. And I didn't know how... I don't know. I just didn't know how it would go on in the months after. And even though we had the podcast, it was very new. So it wasn't like I was falling back on something that was established.
Yeah.
It was literally new. So I think in terms of that kind of thing, I think one of my biggest lessons this year has been that you find your tribe wherever you go. You find the people that will always support you, and you find different people who will help you and not expect anything back or whatever it is. And I think my main worry at that time when I was leaving is I felt like I had such a strong network. And obviously if I'm moving on, that network is not going to be the same. And it's not, don't get me wrong. Like, I can't say that it is. It's not. But as the time has gone on and as we've kind of grown as a podcast, I've realised that there will be people who support me because it's me, or support you because it's you. And it's not because we're representing a big publication. It's because we're us. And I think that's been my biggest lesson that I didn't think that I would have to learn, because I thought I knew that. But obviously I didn't. And I feel like it's one of those things where it literally is, some people will support you because it's you, and some people will not support you because it's you. And you just have to find the right people. That's basically it.
Absolutely. God, yeah.
That is one of my biggest lessons from this year. But I'm still learning it. I'm still learning it.
Absolutely. And I think it's something where, because you'd never done it before, like people used to read your blog.
But it's really weird because I have done it before. Before I joined that publication that we were at for 10 years, I was a blogger. I did it myself. I didn't get anyone telling me, right, write this, do this, do this, do this. What's been your biggest lesson of 2023?
My biggest lesson, oh my God, lots and lots of, again, like you, I've had a lot of lessons. But I think I have learned more about, well, I'm still learning through practice to try and protect my boundaries. You know, I've had things that have happened to me this year where, you know, like certain patterns happen to me with, you know, like people in my life and stuff like that, where I've seen certain things, and it is a natural pattern. But this year has really, the things that have happened to me this year have really made me see them in a much more clearer way of, okay, there is something that needs to change here, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Where, you know, some people I might have my guard up and I'm like, okay, maybe I don't need to have my guard up as much anymore because they've grown as people. But then on the other side, people where I may, you know, have always sort of let them get away with things and sort of kind of allow them, and I'm going to say allow because that's exactly what's happened, allow them to treat me in a certain way, which now I've discovered, oh, hold on, that is not normal. I don't like that, and that is not a space that I want to be a part of. And kind of shift that balance and make sure that, okay, I don't have to cut people out of my life. I just have to make sure that I'm protecting myself in order for me to not be a part of that, or feel so involved in whatever that situation is. Because I feel like I do have a lot of empathy, and I kind of hate that about myself because I've allowed people to treat me in certain ways which doesn't serve me.
I think I'm the opposite.
Do you think?
I feel like my empathy's gone down.
Really? In what way? If you don't mind me asking.
In every way.
Okay.
I just feel like I just can't be bothered with people's stuff anymore, because I feel like if a similar thing was to happen to me, not a lot of people are bothered.
You've actually helped me with a lot.
Do you get what I mean? Because
yeah.
The thing is, you have to put your own boundary after that, because it's just like, why am I going out of my way?
Exactly.
When if the tables were turned, and I know, you know, like the world doesn't go on like that. You know, like people, you have to like be comfortable with that within yourself.
Yeah.
And some people are happy to just give without taking. But I feel like the givers need to have a boundary.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely,
yeah, that's tough.
But you've really helped. You have helped me a lot with figuring that. You have, and this is what I mean. Like, you might not realize, but it's one of those things where and like you and actually another friend of mine as well, who I've been like, you know, she's been through a lot of stuff as well, but she's also learning through these things. And God, like, she has such, like, I think it's one of those things where both of you have such strong mindsets.
It takes a lot. I'll be honest with you. Right. Like, it takes a lot to, and I think this is another lesson that I've learned this year, is to, how do I say it? It's like, so I'm the kind of person that I used to be the kind of person, I'm not that person now, where if there was an exchange of words that I was having with someone, I would not back down.
Okay.
For no reason. That's just me. I just don't want to back down. And if the person sees what I'm saying, then I hope they come out and say, yes, I see what you're saying, in the same way that I would be like, okay, fine, I get it.
Yeah.
But not a lot of people do that. Not a lot of people, I don't know whether it's ego or just because they feel like their voice should be louder or like whatever it is, not a lot of people see the other side of it and think, okay, fine, I take in what you're saying, but I don't agree with it. That is a strong position to be in, that you can say to someone and make them feel seen and heard, even if you don't agree. Not a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
And I think I've got to this stage this year where if I'm in the middle of an exchange of words, I'm quite happy to back down and just walk away. Like, I think it comes with age as well, a little bit, because I just don't want to deal with those situations where someone is not hearing me and I'm hearing them.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
I think it's also about how much energy are you going to give?
Yeah.
It's like kind of save your energy for a positive experience.
Yeah, exactly.
A positive interaction.
Yeah. And so like we said, the year's been tough enough as it is.
Absolutely.
So it's like, just don't make it worse.
But the thing is, I mean, it's also the fact that everyone's going through their own thing, and we completely understand that. But I think it's also about having that awareness of, everyone's going through something.
Yeah.
So it's not just about.
But some people don't give you that back.
No,
that's what this is what I've been trying to say, that some people don't give you that back. You can be accepting of, okay, this person's going through something. Yeah. But in the way that they treat you, it's almost like, I'm going through something. What's wrong with you? Yeah. And it's just like, well, I have feelings too. Like, you can't just treat me like that just because you're going through. Like, it's a lot of things. And I think there's a particular friendship in the last few years, which obviously it was a mutual friendship for me and Shyama as well, that has taught me a lot about myself and the way that I act. And I think that's been the biggest part of the way that I've changed being as a friend. Yeah. Because it's like I said, it's all very well your friend going to see you through something and you being there for them. But at some point, if that friend also doesn't understand that, hold on, you might also be going through something, or you might not be able to be there in that way because you need to step back for a day or something. If there's no mutual understanding, which sometimes there isn't, then I just feel like I don't feel right in those situations anymore. Because I feel like if I'm always the one understanding, that's not fair. No. In any relationship, right? I don't think that's fair. But I've got another question.
Go for it.
Sorry, were you going to say
something?
No.
Go for it.
I've got another question which I'd written down about the podcast. What do you know now that you didn't know then when you first started?
Oh my God, what do I know now that I didn't know?
Only one thing.
Only one thing. Okay. All right, I will have to say this, right? When we first started researching about how to start a podcast and what to do, all the advice was, oh my God, starting a podcast is so easy. You can do it in your own home. It's not very expensive, stuff like that. But no one actually tells you. No one goes into the whole but if you want something that is of good quality, and if there is something that, if you want to develop this in a certain way, these are the things you have to do and this is the way you do it. And I think for both of us, I think we were just like, oh my God, like all of the elements, there's so many elements that no one really talks about. It's all well and good that, if you want to start. But if you have an idea, and I think it's because we came from a publication as well, I think
we probably didn't have to think about that.
It's the fact that we kind of, what we wanted to do, because we've seen we know what good quality is and we're aware of it. I think something that I really learned was the fact that, oh, hold on, we have to be a little, like, I wish I was a little bit more savvy about stuff like this.
Yeah, it's difficult to be, that's a good word, savvy.
Yeah.
It's difficult, I think, because you can't be savvy about everything.
Yeah, it's true.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think I kind of get that.
What about you?
I think it's the same thing I said before, actually, about just building the brand.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much would go into building a brand. It's really funny, though, because I think a lot of people expect me to understand, because to a lot of people before starting the podcast and being part of the publication that I was in, that was all, to some people, I am myself already a brand.
Yeah.
But to me, I'm not that much of a big brand that I can then build another brand really easily. If you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It takes a different kind of mindset to build a different brand, like a podcast, especially when you're still, you're finding your own journey on the podcast and stuff like that. So I think if I knew then how much it took to build a brand, I probably would have been a bit more organized about it.
Yeah.
And kind of more strategic.
But I think you're right. I think because this is a whole new medium.
But if you have like the strong basis to begin with, then we could have changed it and pivoted.
Like in an ideal world, right? It would be great if we did have a team behind us.
Absolutely.
All we have to do is come to the studio and
if
record.
anyone wants to work with us,
if anyone wants to be a
please
producer,
get in touch.
But yeah, I think yeah, definitely. I think it's something that's been a huge learning thing. Yeah.
I think one thing we really did do really well.
Yeah.
Is actually get a logo before we started.
That's true.
Which I know not a lot of podcasts actually do.
No.
To begin with.
Logo.
So I guess we did have a little bit of branding in our head.
What does 2024 look like, or what does Amrita Tana want 2024 to look like for her?
This is a good question, because normally at the end of a year, or like at the beginning of a year, I kind of had an idea, but I don't. For 2024, I actually don't. Because I think 2023 has been so random.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But I think in terms of the podcast, obviously, hopefully, a great end to season 2. We've obviously got a few more guests coming this year to finish off season 2. And then hopefully a few more opportunities, to do with the podcast or even outside it. Just a chance to get ourselves out there a bit more. And stuff like that. And I think, 2024 is probably one of the only years where I'm not planning ahead that much.
And how do you feel about that?
Feels good.
Good, I'm glad.
Sometimes I feel like it gets to this stage where sometimes, especially, in what happened in 2023, and you'd think COVID would have taught me this, but it didn't. 2023 did. Mm-hmm. You literally don't know what the world or what's around the corner or what the world has in store for you. You literally do not know. And you can plan ahead as much as you want to. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But if it's not going to happen, it won't happen. So, I do feel like, you have to put a little bit of effort into wanting something to happen. And so maybe 2024, I think I'll start off with a vision board, not just for podcast, but just generally, and then never look at it again, which is what I did in 2023. I did that in 2023. And then I opened up my vision board last week and I was like, oh my God, I really hope it's achieved one thing. And it's achieved one thing.
Which is?
Out of about 15. I couldn't even remember what it was.
Oh God.
I think it was having guests on the podcast.
Aren't you supposed to be looking at your vision board every day? So it's like manifesting. Oh dear. I mean, I don't think I ever go into mine's a little bit opposite. Thinking about that, mine's a little bit opposite. I have a few things that I really hope 2024 looks like, but I think mainly I want to do things that serve me and consciously serve me and be in a place where not like actually thinking about what is good for me and what is a good space for me to be in. And the boundaries thing has something to do with it, but it's also sort of, I want to be more intentional about certain things,
set your intentions,
set my intentions and let go of the fact that by being intentional, something might come out with something unintentional might come out of it. but at least I start with an intention and try and work towards that. So yeah, that's in a nutshell. God knows what's going to happen by this time next year.
Exactly.
God knows where we will be this time next year.
Exactly. Maybe we'll have our second Mollywood star. One can hope.
Or third or fourth or fifth.
Okay, I'm not going to hope that much.
No.
That's not on my vision board.
No.
Okay, so what do you think has been your favourite moment? Okay, I'll do it in season 2. I'll narrow it down.
Season
In
2.
season 2, what's been your favourite moment so far?
So far. Oh my God, there has been lots of favourite moments.
But if you could choose one.
Do you know what, actually? I'm going to say this, right? Because it was our first episode with a guest, I think Haroon's episode, after finishing his episode, I really felt more kind of confident about, okay, we can do this. Because it was the first time that we had a guest. And, you know, like I said, it was that buzz. But it really it was also that sigh of relief of, I know we can do this. But actually thinking about it and actually doing it can be two different things.
Yeah.
So I think having those moments of realisation of, okay, this feels good. And feeling positive about it. What about you?
So again, I've got quite a few as well. But I think to narrow it down, I think... Aside from what you said, I'm going to do slightly a pivot to what you said. Basically, I feel like when it's all well and good, me and Shyama thinking, oh, this is a great episode. We feel good after it. But when the guest feels that, I feel like that's a different level. So I think, for example, Navin posted on his social media that it was one of his most honest and, you know, one of his best interviews, the one he liked the most. I think that meant a lot because... I've known Navin for over a decade, and the fact that he even agreed to come on the podcast because it was us,
because it was you,
because it was me, that meant a lot anyway.
Yeah.
And then in order to, you know, he's been in the industry for so long, and then for him to say that, it was a really big deal. But also I think after Raj as well, because me and Shyama we've known Raj for years, and Raj was feeling a bit nervous before we started, and then at the end you could feel the buzz that he felt.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? But because I feel like that's more precious to me, because these people have come in, even though they speak well and you know them, you know their voices, you know partly of their personalities. And then when they feel good at the end, I think that's a different feeling.
Yeah.
So, but if I had to choose an actual favourite moment inside one of the episodes, I think it might be when... I think it's the nostalgic moment of when Haroon, at the start of his episode, was like, I've known you guys for years. We've known each other in vulnerable situations.
Oh, God.
And it was just, you know, like just going back and thinking the journey that we've been on.
Well,
just with him.
With him.
And I think that was a nice thing to start with, because that was our first episode with the guest, as you said.
Yeah, exactly. I think also another moment that has really stuck out with the Navin episode is where he actually said, I've never, like you said, he said it in the episode, like I've never shared this part of my life before. And it's like, hold on, but this is your journey to how you became big.
This is what I mean about interviews. How has
nobody ever spoken to you about this?
It's because of interviews. This is what I mean. He was either promoting a song or he had like a 10-minute window or whatever, and you don't get to talk about what you really are.
Well, it's just been really lovely, and I think just having all our guests, all the guests that we've had have been absolutely incredible, and I'm just really great. I'm really grateful.
Yeah,
I'm
same.
really, really grateful that they've taken time out, and talked to us and been like that with us.
Yeah, it's nice to hear people who are present.
Yeah,
and sometimes in interviews, you know, like it's a snap, okay, next kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you don't really get that a lot of the time. Unless you're Shah Rukh Khan, of course. Shah Rukh Khan is present anywhere.
Oh my God. we need to do an episode on him.
Oh, again.
Just on him.
We did that in season 1, in case you haven't heard it.
But I think yes, we have. But that was all the problematic roles he's done. I think we need to balance it out and do an episode of all the things we love about him. That will be a 2-hour, 3-hour show, but it doesn't matter.
That's so funny. What has surprised you the most in 2023?
You know what? Just generally, it's like you said, the main thing that has surprised me the most this year is people and tribes. You're talking about people in your tribe and how you never even thought would be on your radar are like, oh my God, hi, what are you doing? That has surprised me a lot. And it's been nice. What about you?
I don't know, to be fair. I think the biggest surprise is probably not a very positive one.
Okay.
I think this year has been the biggest realization for me that literally you don't know what someone is going through. And you don't, we've talked, like I said, we've talked a lot about mental health, but it is literally that you don't know what someone is going through. What they show you on the surface or what they show you day to day is quite often not what's going on in real life. So sometimes if it is, you feel someone's a bit off, or you feel there's a pattern that you can feel or whatever, don't be so closed off that you don't check in with the person. And even if they choose not to talk to you or open up or show their vulnerability, you don't know that the way that you have made the effort to check in might have changed their whole day or their whole mindset. And I feel a bit more conscious about that this year.
It's also because of no one else is going through exactly the same thing as
exactly. You. And that is the same for everyone. No one is going through what you are going through.
You don't always have to understand. You don't always have to understand.
You just have to be there.
You just have to be there.
Or just show that you're
absolutely.
there. And that's it.
Absolutely.
And I know I've always cherished when I've had friends, even if it's after a few months being like, hey, just checking in.
Yeah.
And I felt as if, oh my God, thank you. Like,
yeah. Well, it's kind of, it's that thing of like, you don't always have to, because do you find, like, let's say if you put something on social media, let's say, and you put a quote up or something that's slightly suggestive of, oh my God, she might not be okay, when really you just like the quote. Do you feel like people come to you then and be like, oh, is everything all right?
I used to.
Okay.
Not so much now, but I did put up something at Diwali.
Okay.
It wasn't a quote. It was something that I said.
Yes.
And I just felt like I needed a bit more positivity, and I hoped that the light of Diwali would bring me that.
Yeah.
And I had so many messages the next day because I don't usually put up stuff like that. I put up a quote, like you said, but not something from me and saying I need some strength or something. I felt like I needed that at that time. And I felt like Diwali was just something that I hoped brought it with it. Yeah. And I had loads of messages after that. And I was really grateful. I woke up and I was just like, whoa, okay. I didn't realize that would be so triggering for people who thought there was something wrong. And there was something that was beating me up. But I didn't expect so many people to message. But it's weird because I had to put that out in order for people to ask.
Well, you know what? You saying that, like, it just makes me think, like, especially this year, like, and this is what I mean by being more intentional.
Yeah.
And being more kind of like forthcoming in sort of not having all my time for everyone, but just having those little bits of, I'm thinking of you, or, I hope everyone's okay and stuff like that, because my life has changed. And even though I'm still trying to navigate that, and not taking for granted that people understand that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's great that people understand it, but I can't take that for granted.
Exactly.
So yes.
I'm going to ask one more question, a really quick one.
Oh, go for it.
Is there one word that you would use to sum up 2023 with the podcast or not the podcast, just overall?
Overall, roller coaster.
Just one word. Okay. Yeah.
What about you?
Gratitude. Because even though it's been a roller coaster, I think I'm still grateful for everything that came with it.
I want to change mine. I'd say insight.
Okay.
I'd definitely say insight, yeah.
That's a good thing.
That means a lot of stuff, but yeah.
Rather than hindsight.
Rather than hindsight, insight. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And I think we will bring that to an end.
We'll bring that to an end. Thank you so much,
we hope you have enjoyed our look back episode of 1 year of Voice It Out podcast with Shyama and Amrita. You know where to find us.
You know where to find us.
You know exactly where to find us.
We thank you all so much for this past year. We thank all those people who've been listening to us from the beginning, people who've just discovered us and are listening. even though we don't sound as refined as we do, please do go back and listen to our season 1 as well as all our guests. And honestly, we thank you all so much for the support. And like, you know, especially after we've upped our social media, we've been getting a little bit more interaction. Please follow us, please like, please share, please subscribe. We're on YouTube as well.
Yes.
Thank you, DJ Shy Guy, for the amazing jingle.
Yes, thank you very much.
His episode, oh my God.
Go back and listen. He is there is actually nothing that this man can't do. Yes, I agree.
He's incredible.
But yeah, just thank you to everyone, and hopefully you will enjoy the episodes we have coming, because we still have some interesting guests left in season 2. And we will catch you in our next episode.
We don't want to keep it in. We want to
voice it out. Bye.